Welcome back, everyone, to episode 4 of What's Spinnin' here at 45Drives. And we've got a wonderfully special guest here today, Mr. Jeff Geerling.
Took a few weeks off here.
Yep.
Coming back strong. Thanks for coming aboard, Jeff.
Yeah, excited to be talking to you guys again. It's been like a month or so, hasn't it?
I know, it feels like a couple weeks ago. It has been 3 months?
Yep.
3 months.
Well, what? Yeah,
Well,
just about.
I mean, yeah, we probably had lots of chats in between, but yeah, since the Creator Summit.
That's what I was counting, since the summit.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten a lot colder here since then, unfortunately.
Very cold, yep.
Yeah.
No snow yet. We got a little bit of sleet, but...
Don't say that. Don't even speak that into existence yet.
Yeah, no, it's coming. It's coming.
Everyone, and for everyone listening and all that, I'm coming off a cold here, so if I sound a little snuffy or annoying, just yell at me to lean away from the mic.
Did that cold start before or after you did the Hot Ones challenge?
After, yeah.
So what's going on with you? What's new in your world right now?
What's spinning?
Oh, there's a lot. The Raspberry Pi 5 came out after our Creator Summit, so that was a whole... I still have a lot to do with that. Also, the HomeLab HL15 came it was yesterday or 2 days ago. And I was like, ooh, I gotta procrastinate on something. How can I procrastinate? But the problem is the motherboard that I have for it was too big.
Oh, no.
I have another one coming.
Good.
And it'll be the right size. So we're gonna see that one come online soon here. And in addition to that, when I was on site, you guys gave me the parts that I need to get the XL60 back in service and not lift off because the fans are going so hot.
So not sound like a jet engine.
I'm excited about that too.
Yep.
Nice.
And I'm building a new office and studio. This might be one of the last podcasts that's seen in this space. We'll see.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been actually following some of those vlogs you've been putting out. They've been really cool. So you're almost
right
finished?
Now, the current task is trying to find a good server rack for it. So
Okay.
talking to a few vendors, I found out there's a local company that makes server racks just outside of St. Louis. So
Oh, cool.
and talk to them now. See
Yeah.
if they can get a good rack for the Storinator.
Shop local. Gotta love it.
Who's that, if you don't mind me asking?
Not Lamar. That's something. It starts with L. Lowell, maybe, or
Oh,
something like
okay,
that.
cool.
They do mostly AV racks, but they do
Gotcha.
some data center stuff too. But I think that their specialty is AV and like multimedia.
I was very much a noob when I bought my rack, and I just literally found the cheapest one that looked kind of cool. And yeah, I realized that is not probably the best way to do it now. So I've been stuck with mine for a little while, and I've been looking to upgrade for a few years, but I'm just haven't pulled the trigger. Too
You
lazy.
just do what I do and leave it on a desk.
Once you have everything in your rack, you got servers in there, you got your APC, everything. It's just so much work to go and do it again. So
Well, that reminds me of a fun little story. I went when I was with Linus building his Gluster cluster years and years ago.
Yep.
I was like, all right, Linus, here's the time I'm going to need to do all this to set up the server. He goes, hold on, you want to help me rearrange my rack for a minute?
For a minute.
You don't say no, right? Especially when he's got the camera on.
Not to lie.
Anyway, it took us a while.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, that's good.
Crazy.
So, we like to start with a little bit, Jeff, of just a little bit of the origin story. You've done so many cool things, and I'm sure everyone watching here is pretty familiar with you. But at that same time, everyone likes to talk about themselves a little bit, right? Especially where they came from. So why don't you just give us a quick...
If you're a YouTube creator, that's like your whole life.
Exactly. But everyone who's came through as a creator and all this has all ended up being an entrepreneur. They've touched all aspects of the business, from doing it themselves, servicing infrastructure, to creating. And creating is so hard.
Yeah.
It's all so hard, but it's all driven from that kind of drive to want to do it yourself and be an entrepreneur. So how'd you get into the wonderful world of everything IT?
I got into it through radio. So my dad is a radio engineer, and he has been his whole career. He actually started as a DJ, but had an electrical engineering degree and got into engineering. And when he started out, the world was different. There was no data in radio. It was all analog, everything,
Right.
the tubes and the transmitters and stuff.
Black magic.
I grew up seeing all the things he did, and he would take me to a tower site, and I saw all the cool, huge equipment making loud noises and things. And he showed me the parts that you don't touch unless you want to become a pile of ashes, all that kind of stuff. So it was a ton of fun, and I always looked up to him. I thought what he did was awesome, and also getting to meet all the talent on the local radio stations was a fun side effect of that. And every once in a while it's like, hey, there's tickets to the ball game or tickets to the thing or something, because his stations were integrated with the St. Louis Cardinals and the Blues and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
So I always thought that it was a fun thing to do, that which was more electronics and more RF focused. But as I grew up, as part of that radio experience, they started transitioning to like, oh, we can do digital control systems, digital this. So, he would start putting in a server to do files for their, finances and for their traffic system, the system that does the advertising. Then they're like, hey, we can use these things for audio. And then they did audio in the thing. So I grew up during that transitionary period. And meanwhile, he'd like bring home, he'd be like, this is so cool. There's a CD-ROM. It has a disk that holds data. So every step of the way, he would bring home something and we'd use it. I remember he brought home a color printer the first time.
You got
and we sat there
bleeding
and
edge
for
stuff.
like an hour and a half
Yeah.
as it printed one sheet out. I was like, oh my gosh, this, like the possibilities. And so from that point, I like, my brain is always like, this is really cool, but I know that, instead of 30 minutes for a page, it'll take like 10 seconds someday. So I want to be in that. I want to do that. So he really ignited that passion. And the first time I ever did a web programming thing, I got a book on HTML back when it was a new thing. And I think it was like 10 minutes to your first HTML page or something like that. And so I started writing web pages and putting them up on a little Interjet web server that we had an IP address that was for the radio station, but I got to use it because I didn't need it.
Yeah.
They didn't even have a VPN at that point. So I put my stuff up there and I shared pictures with the family and all that, and for like the 3 family members that had internet back then.
Right.
But
what year would this be around?
This was 95, 96.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. So, and I was like, well, there's only like 10 cool websites on the internet, and I'm one of them. And it's like, but I learned, I took all those steps and learned, and one day, while I was interning, I became an intern for the radio stations that he worked at. Then I was a full-time employee for a couple of years. Nice. But he said, we have this new digital audio system, and when it plays the track, it'll pop a file on the disk that says like, here's the track that's playing. Can you get that onto the internet somehow? Then we can tell listeners like, hey, if you don't know what the song is playing, go on the internet. And this is before smartphones. This is before.
Yeah.
This is before even a lot of people even had internet. It was still dial-up. So if someone was at business and they're like, man, I love this tune, and you want to know what it is, and you didn't hear the DJ, you could go online and see it. And I wired that up using CGI scripts. So that was my first thing in web, and I was like, oh man, this is so cool. Like I connected what's playing on the radio to this internet thing, and there it went into, it went into web design, and web design went into like, how do I make these web pages load faster, better? Then it went into back end, like databases, PHP performance and things, because I was really involved in the Drupal ecosystem. And through that, I really got into open source, because up to that point, in radio, open source is not a thing. There's all proprietary.
Yep.
So the software, the hardware, everything. Even today, there's very, very little open source in broadcast radio. In ham radio,
DIY, yeah, of course.
Yep. It's that way. So I got into Drupal, and that introduced me to the idea that like everything you do can be open and shared, and that the software is not the value, it's the putting things together that's the value, the integration and the services around it. And there's a whole thing that happened this past year with Red Hat that
yeah we're all
I know you guys were affected by it. I was affected by it. My whole philosophy was founded on that idea with Drupal, that like the company Acquia that has Drupal's founder, and it's one of the biggest Drupal companies. They've never sold Drupal. They've never had licensing around it, because the software is not the thing. It's the community and the ability to lead the way and bring that to more people through the services they provide. So I learned all of my open source stuff through the Drupal community. So I'm always indebted to them. And I still run my website on Drupal. Not many people run a personal blog on Drupal because it's so heavyweight.
I'm actually not familiar with Drupal.
It's so you have WordPress.
Okay, so I got
Drupal,
you.
It's a content management system.
Cool.
And it used to be really popular with nonprofits, NGOs, those kind of things.
Understood.
And it still runs probably 1 or 2% of the top 500 websites on the internet.
Wow.
a lot of enterprises use it because it integrates with everything nowadays.
So that's
but it
really
requires a lot of work to get set up.
Oh, okay. So that's really interesting. It sounds to me then you did all this kind of started early. So you don't have like a formal education, like computer science background. You kind of were just an enthusiast and got in it and just kept going. Those are the people that are really cool, I find. Like people that just kind of went and DIY, learned themselves the whole way through.
If you got your dad showing you radio frequency engineering
at a young age,
you got enough education.
Yeah, that's
black
really
magic,
cool.
baby.
I really like that.
And it's so cool because that led on to everything else. And
exactly.
If you look back on the journey that went to Jeff Geerling has a YouTube channel, there's a lot of different people on YouTube, and there's a lot of value in the different types of people, whether you started out as a salesperson and you got into YouTube, or you started out as an engineer and got into YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
There's valuable resources in all those. As an engineering type of person, I enjoy the people who generally like came into it from something else completely. Like I make a lot less money doing YouTube stuff than I ever did consulting and working at full time. But I get so much more value out of it, and
opportunities.
My secret, and my secret end goal here is that my dad, when he retires, will come back and not full time, but work with me on things. We've been doing like radio tower site tours, and we want to go to factories and talk to people and stuff about engineering, and I can just never get enough engineering content. There's some great people on YouTube with it, but there's so much more out there that
you nailed it.
Can't tell the stories,
and especially those engineers like your dad's vintage who came in before that pre-digital age. The amount of knowledge that you had to know and just the feel to it. It's kind of lost on the world a little bit. There's nothing better than just talking to that old seasoned vet of an engineer who's like, "Oh, I've seen some stuff." Yeah. So it's great. That I love that. I love that idea.
Those guys too had a lot of the don't know just how, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is like people nowadays can make things work really, really well and know how to use technology, but getting under the hood and really understanding how it all works it's not as common. Whereas with the old school guys like that who knew from start to finish how everything kind of worked under the hood, which is really, really cool.
And that's what drives my passion for like Raspberry Pi and ESP devices and home automation and all that. It's at a level that's approachable. You can actually touch things and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that was lost for a while, and it's slowly coming back in through STEM in schools and things. But the whole like hands-on approach.
Yep.
When my dad did radio, it was like there was a giant thing, and you had to touch it and wrestle it and pull it out, and when it sparked, it like fused, so you had to use tools. Like you learned like this is the path of the signal, and here's how it works. Once it all became just digital and
math,
solid state,
numbers in the air.
It's like put box in thing, plug it in, and it's good. Like that's a lot different. So
and it's even got a step.
You can.
Sorry, I spoke over you. Keep going.
No, and I love like with my little Pi projects and things, like you're plugging things together. You learn some of the software side, you learn some of the hardware side, and every once in a while you release a little magic smoke and you take that lesson and do it better next time.
We have a fun magic smoke story here. I won't name the employee who did, but we burned 44 hard drives. We had the 5 and the 12 switched, and I remember hearing the story. It was before I got here, and I guess they said turn it on, and he goes, "You turn it on." So he turns the switch on, the lights dim, poof, the magic smoke comes out, and one survived.
One of 44.
Apparently.
Was that the first prototype of the Destroyinator?
Yes, it was. How'd you know?
That's the permanent Destroyinator.
But yeah, you're right about the hands-on and the letting the magic smoke out. You got to make a mistake to learn something new, and it's gone a step further than even the whole digital age abstracted the hardware out a little bit because you just like plug it in, it works. But we've even seen that go as far as the whole microservice. Oh, there's a library for everything. Where all the way into software development now, where you're just like, oh, I don't know what's going on under the hood. I just know if I use this,
import
this, and this, and this, and this, it all works.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good to, I don't know, encourage that whole, life's a series of black boxes. You can't open them all at once, but you can one by one.
Slowly, yeah. The inquisitiveness, I think that's what makes some people really, really good at their craft, is just like not accepting things for, okay, this is just how it is. It's like, well, why? Let me just dig into that right now a little bit to figure out what's going on with the hood. You do that enough times over a long period of time, and you really start to understand things at a lower level.
Yeah, and that goes back to something I think about a lot with like if you're self-taught versus being taught. I think that a lot of times somebody who's self-taught has a deeper understanding of something, but they don't have that book knowledge that's helpful. And a lot of people who are taught in a school don't have the practical application side of it, but they do have 100%. A deeper understanding of what makes it happen.
Yep.
Like the ideal would be putting those two together. It's just, to me, it's a matter of time. Like I would love to go back and take some courses now that I know these things. Like I really do want to learn a little bit more about that history or how this exactly works, but I just don't have the time. But some people that I've met and some people in the comments who are very rude will say things like, those who can't do teach and all that. And it's like, to me, I've seen the best teachers are the ones who, whether or not they could do it, they can understand it and bring that understanding to other people.
100%.
So, like for my videos, I always try, like, it's funny, if I'm doing a video on, let's say, a piece of software for the Raspberry Pi or for the 45 Home Lab, the HL15 or something, I have to do something. I have to redo it. I have to undo it and do it again and do it like 8 different ways. And then I'll start having an understanding. Then I'll put together a script. Then I work on the script, editing it to make it so that I can convey that better. And then after that, I usually have pickups and things. So I'll have to redo some things afterwards. And I might even edit it. So by the end of that process, I usually know something about 40 times better than I would if I were just implementing it one time. So, Ceph and things that are more complicated, Kubernetes clusters, those kind of things, the teachers, if it's a good teacher, they're somebody who I would pay infinite money to over just a normal consultant who, working on a project.
We always say it. Yep.
Everything about it. And
exactly.
That's a big difference. And you can tell when you're watching a YouTube video or when you're reading a book or something, you can tell when somebody's just like churning out documentation.
Yeah, surface level.
They haven't really had a real world appreciation.
Yep.
And
for sure.
And I hope that comes through. Sometimes it's hard because also the practical reality is if I made a 45-minute video about something,
exactly,
you're not going to get views on it, and so I can't turn that into a living. So I still have to make a living. I have to pay health insurance and bills and pay for the electricity to power the 45 Home Lab server and all that. So.
It's very power efficient.
So I have to balance that.
I'm just shaking my head because I agree with everything.
Hopefully more power efficient than most. We'll
oh, yeah. I can't wait to see what you got there going on for that. I don't know. Maybe it's ARM.
Yeah, I will jump in, though, Jeff, and say it does come across in your videos, and you've got a real art to that as well, too, because I'm nodding along here like Mitch was probably about to say is every time we shot a video, it's the same thing. It was like the best way I learned it was, okay, I know enough to go make a video about this. Then I start to make the video, and then I actually learn everything I was going to really learn because you have to get it right when you go to show people. Back in school, it's the same thing. Like, oh, I know this. You go and teach someone, and you're like, now I really know this.
Yeah.
But
trying to get someone else to know what you know is, you're like, oh, wait, I don't know this.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought I did.
So go stick a camera in your face and try to explain it to someone. You'll find out pretty quick the parts you don't know.
Exactly.
But that's something we're still getting better at here. That art of not like mushing your brain on the page and here's everything I know about something. It's to get the flow of it right and leave the right stuff in so that it's useful and not. It's hard. It's really hard to do. So I just wanted to say, it does come across in your videos. And you gave us some good feedback when you came on the Creator Summit too, of like that you got really good ideas, particularly that Steam Deck video. But then we went, hey guys, here's how we did everything. And there's the 2 steps to it. So
you took the engineer's approach. Like, for me, I would love to. I watch some guys on YouTube who make these great tutorials that go into depth on everything. On the flip side, sometimes I just don't watch their video because I put it in my watch later and then it's there for a few months and I just don't have the 45 minutes or 50 minutes. So, partly that's a societal problem. We have short attention spans, I guess. But
the TikTok age.
If you can distill out the parts that really hook people in and then give them something like, for me, I always put a blog post out with more, or in GitHub, I put an issue with all the details, but just collapsing that down so that it's digestible, because there will be people. It's probably less than 1% of people, but there will be people who see it and they're like, I want to do that. And then someday they actually do that. And when they do it, they learn the things that you didn't fill in the blanks for too, which is, I think, a valuable thing. My dad, one project that I remember in particular was I got this little build your own FM transmitter kit. And back then you could build anything. Like the FCC and regulations were not a thing as much. Nowadays they can triangulate on you a lot easier because of digital stuff. But I think that somebody bought it for me, maybe my godfather or something, for Christmas, and I was like, Dad, can you help me put this together? And he's like, I don't have time right now, but here's my soldering iron and here's the multimeter.
Nice.
No power tools, Dale.
He like gave me the stuff, and I burned myself on that project. And I learned
literally
very quickly the parts of the soldering iron that are still hot, even if it's not the tip.
Yeah.
So
that reminds me, there's this legendary stock photo of someone holding a soldering, like a pencil, and it's
on the wrong part.
It puts me in stitches every time I see it.
So
anyway,
funny.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, but he gave me that. He it's the teach a man to fish, and he can fish forever.
Yep. Exactly.
He gave me that, and I try to also do that sometimes too. I don't want to give every step of everything. I want to show, like, here's the end result, but also enough of the meat that they can understand it. And then
100%.
if they want to do it later, there was just a guy who emailed me about Home Assistant. I did a video on Home Assistant. I showed a lot more detail than I normally do, which is risky because you might get fewer views. It doesn't retain people as much. But he said he had been wanting to do it forever, and he saw the video and he saw how quick it was, and he did it. And now, that's a guy who's going to spend the rest of his life automating everything way too much. And his wife will probably get angry at him for how many automations are in the house. But at least he's learning, I guess.
Exactly. There's like a very fine line and we're still learning how to do it. We're making our videos. It's like, I'm going to make a video on a subject, and it's very deep and technical. And really, you could come in and you could make a super entertaining video that doesn't go super in the weeds. Sometimes your ego's like, I want everyone to know that I know everything about this, so I'm going to make sure that they know that I know. And then it just doesn't end up doing anything for anyone because, like, no one is going to sit there and watch the whole thing. So it's like, yeah, make it entertaining, make it cool. Then if someone really wants to dive in and learn it, put a blog post, put, like you said, something up on GitHub.
There's also a practical reason I like to do that is, in general, it's gotten better because I'm a little more efficient with editing. But every minute of video is typically an hour worth of process, editing and processing that video. For me, for my videos, everybody has a different style, but nowadays it's probably more like 40 minutes or so. But if I can cut out a couple minutes of content, that's going to save me, an hour or two at least in the edit. So I also whittle it down quite a bit. I spend more time scripting than I do probably testing and all that. On a bigger video. On a smaller video, sometimes I ad-lib a little bit, but I really focus on what's the story here, like what do I want to do, how do I do it, and what are the shortcomings, what are the pitfalls, what's the challenge, and how did I get it done? And I try to build that into the script in a way that's editable, digestible, and entertaining, at least to my audience is probably a little bit more technical than general YouTube.
You're making
I don't have this
mini movies
or anything, but
you have like really good, you know what I mean, like a story, like you said, that's important. And I think a lot of the times we went into a video thinking, here we want to teach someone, but not, or someone something, but never thought about like as a story. You know what I mean? Like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I mentioned the Steam Deck thing in particular. It's like there is a story there.
That could have been a great story.
I got bored on my family vacation, and I was like, I need to get all my content onto the Steam Deck for sharing, for watching movies and TV series and stuff. So how do I make this thing a storage server or whatever?
Yep.
Networking them together, getting Kubernetes on them, all these different things. So for me, I used to start with the product or whatever I'm talking about, like a thing, like, oh, I have this cool new Raspberry Pi cluster board, and how can I make a video about it? Now I'm like, there's a thing that I want to do, and how do I use a tool? And then I'll try to be a little choosier about what tool I'm using. The thing is, it's hard for me to say that too. Looking back on like 3 years ago, Jeff, I didn't have the ability to call up someone who makes something and say, hey, I have this YouTube channel, I have a lot of viewers, and I'm interested in doing this. Can you work with me?
Yep.
And can I get an engineer to help me with this thing that I know is going to be a problem? Like nowadays I can do that. So it's also calling it like a privilege or whatever,
you get
of having
opportunities.
an audience. But that's something that it's a different mindset, thinking about the story and the, and you could call it a story, or you could call it a challenge or a feature or whatever.
Yep.
But that thing, and then working backwards from it versus a lot of YouTube a lot of YouTube is like, here's a product, and it's like that just, to me, that doesn't hit very well, but it a lot of times can be popular, but it's hard, especially if you're like a new YouTube channel or something and you have product reviews or something. It's just not as easy to get into that.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's the value, like you mentioned earlier. It's the creative satisfaction you get from making, you just put something in, you throw a little joke, or you put a little way of saying something, you're like, I'm proud of that. And then people like it or comment on it. It's just, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That stuff feels good.
So switching gears a little bit, a couple of things that we still want to talk to and ask about. So one thing that I would definitely want to touch on is we noticed also you have an LLC, a company, Midwestern Mac, and we saw, I think, is that really just the company that you use to like publish your books through and stuff, or do you do consulting through that as well, or how does that kind of work?
So it's a funny history. Not many people know about Midwestern Mac unless you've ever done anything business related with me, because that's the LLC that I use to do all my business stuff. Sure. Since 2008, I think I set that up. I set it up because after college, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't know. I could do like individual stuff or whatever. I had Crohn's disease back then, but didn't have a lot of issues. So I was thinking about going full-time independent, but ended up working in web consulting, which was very lucrative, much more so than individual consulting like I was planning on doing.
Right.
But I helped a few people set up like a network with Macs. I was Mac focused back then because I did web design and graphic design and photography, all three things which were, I mean, they're still pretty popular on Macs today, but back then it was like you used a Mac. If you were in graphic design,
that's what you did.
Used Macs.
Yeah.
There was no question. And if you did audio, you used Macs. The Windows was not where it is today for that. So,
sure.
So I did that for a while, and I was doing, IT consulting. But then I started working in web, and Midwestern Mac kind of faded away. But I started, when I was doing web, some people needed site search, and they didn't want to use Google site search or whatever. And so I helped them integrate custom Apache Solr, which is another open source project. Mm-hmm. It's basically like really good search for any kind of content, but I would help them integrate it in their website. So I started a service for that and ran that for almost 12 years or 11 years to let people, they could sign up online, get their Drupal website connected into one of my servers, and then it would run the search for their site. And then I also started a uptime monitoring service for about 8 years or so, mostly because I wanted it. And at that time, there was only one or two other ones, but they were not very good and they couldn't send you text messages. So I set mine up to send text messages, and it was like $5 or it was $2 a month or something, super cheap. And both of those earned money, but they weren't like 10x or whatever. And I didn't want to grow them. I wanted them for myself mostly and for a few of my customers. And then I decided to open it up and get more. So I never really marketed or anything, but they did teach me a lot about when you build a service, pricing models, and how to make sure that it's sustainable and maintenance. Because when you keep a service going for a year or two, that's one thing, but 10 years, that's talking 3 or 4 major OS upgrades, server migrations, data security, dealing with data breaches, dealing with customer relations, all those things it taught me. And it's funny, like some of those I don't use at all with YouTube, but a lot of it I do kind of use that in how do I forecast, is this project that I'm working on going to pan out? And if it doesn't, is it going to ruin me? No, like I don't take those risks. So I do try to do a few big videos every year, and sometimes they work well, sometimes they kind of fizzle a little bit. But having all those business experiences through Midwestern Mac over the years really helped it, so that instead of like taking a full huge life risk doing this YouTube stuff, it was more of a calculated risk, and it has paid off so far. Like this office build, it's a risk. I'm putting a lot of money into it. I'm going to be paying for commercial space. But it's a calculated risk. And worst case, I will end up not making a lot of profit for the next couple of years. That's the absolute worst case. Like my YouTube views tank, my books tank, everything tanks, and I get sick. Like that's worst case. Family's still fine. I wouldn't take a risk to risk anything like our home or
your home and family.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the running
I think
things.
That's the biggest. That's the biggest thing for me with Midwestern Mac, and I'm so glad I started that up
you from
years ago.
Right. Yep. No, that makes sense. I was going to say that the running theme that we hear pretty much with every entrepreneur that we've talked to / creator is it's like there's something that I really wanted. It didn't exist. So I was like, I'm just going to build it because I want that. And then it just becomes something from that. So that's so cool, man. Is just being able to be like, well, no one else is going to do it. So I guess I got to. That's such an awesome attitude. Love it.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, back then I started the search thing when Google search appliances had just fallen out. Like they were like, we're not going to keep making these search appliances. The little box you'd put into your data center and have search in locally. So my thing was like a cloud connected thing, but it was still private. It was per customer. And because people didn't want to go from their private search box to Google Cloud search that was just Google with your site specified. It's a big difference there. So that was a big thing. But now, as Google and other companies are not respecting privacy as much, and they're doing things like putting more and more ads and things, a service like that could work again. But it's like, I'm not the one that's going to build it.
Sure.
But,
which does raise an interesting question.
It sounds like my levels are better now.
Yeah.
So that's
much.
Sorry, I was so quiet. I was going to start screaming at you guys.
I was going to start whispering.
But you just recently did an interview with, was it Raspberry Pi? I don't know. It was all about Raspberry Pis.
Yes.
But you had so you run most of your home services off Raspies, as I eloquently like to call them. And you don't really use much cloud services you're mentioning.
Or any.
Yeah.
That's pretty
I use cloud for backup.
Backup? Nice.
Yeah, having an offsite backup, because it's easier than having my dad run something at his house when I can't trust him as much as I trust me.
Gotcha. Because that's really the main benefit of cloud, the convenience of it.
Yep.
Besides that, you don't really own it, or
lose
you
other things,
quite know what you're gonna get.
Yep. You don't know if
It's
there's going to be a
usually
data
more
breach.
expensive too.
Yep.
Oh, for sure.
People don't realize it how expensive it is to use cloud. A lot of people. I have a story about a time when we were rebuilding something in Amazon that was on somebody's local premises, and we told them, like, this will probably end up being more expensive than your local stuff, even accounting for 1 or 2 sysadmins full time, that kind of thing. But they still wanted to go through with it, and I mean, in the end, there's calculations that are more than just hiring 2 people and having the space at a data center and having the air conditioning and all that. But for this particular case, we didn't even realize at the time how much storage bandwidth they used, because it's always hard to find these things out until you hit the switch and move it over. So we had them on Amazon's Elastic Storage EBS or whatever. Not EBS. It was one that's the Elastic file system, basically Samba, but they scale it for you magically. And magic just means lots of money, basically.
Yeah.
We put them on there, and then when we launched their site, it was a lot of traffic, a lot more than we expected, a lot more than their logs had showed us, and they ended up paying a very hefty monthly sum just for transporting that data in and out of Amazon. So, it's those little costs that really add up, and for some people, you realize, you know what, let's bring this back in house. For me, for my consumer stuff, it's like I do YouTube stuff. It's so nice to have a 10 gigabit connection to my storage locally, but I still want to have that third offsite backup. I have 2 NASs local, and then I have my Storinator that right now is offline because it's so loud and my wife was complaining. So when I get the new office set up, it's going to go back online, and the home lab server is going to take its place in my rack here.
Nice.
But I have 2 local copies, and then I have that cloud copy on Amazon Glacier Deep Archive, which is pretty cheap. But there's so many other ways to do it. What I'm excited about is I want to try to get some replication set up with ZFS, and then I might move out of Amazon Glacier. But that's a secret project that
love to help you
guys
with
might
that one.
involve
Yeah, that's awesome.
Next year, but I've been talking to Wendell about it.
Nice.
So if that gives any.
Oh yeah, I know
idea.
exactly what it's all about. Yeah, Wendell's gonna be the new cloud for everybody.
It's called Wendell Cloud.
Yeah, but no, like people don't realize, right? There's all these cloud services that you sign up for. It's like, oh, it's $10 a month here. It's $20 for this one. It's like those costs really start to add up. And the one thing that I say is too, it's like it's empowering to take those things and roll them yourself, right? Like having your own Nextcloud instance or whatever it may be, rolling your, like, you can pay for the doorbell. What's it called? The doorbell?
Ring.
Yeah, you can pay for that and let them store all your stuff in the cloud. But it's like, I don't want that stuff up on the cloud that might have a data breach and stuff. It's just the principle. It's like, no crazy things are coming to my door, but it's like that's my data. I want to hold on to it, and I want to be the proprietor of that kind of stuff. So I think it's really cool that you do kind of host all your own stuff with Pies, especially nice low power, very efficient, which is awesome. There's a lot of really cool machine vision stuff that's been coming out on the open source last couple of years too. So we can do a lot of cool stuff. With
That's a project I'm planning on working on at the office soon. I have 4 cameras and a few more that I might put different places, but I want to set it up so that anytime anybody moves anywhere in the office, it captures that, it saves a clip. Maybe at some point it identifies who's in the picture, or if it's unknown, it does that. It sends me a notification if the alarm is on, and it will upload that immediately to somewhere off-site. So for better security, basically, somebody said, what if somebody comes in, cuts your power, cuts the network, puts in a thing, and whatever. It's like, I'm not prepared for an EMP. I'm not
we don't want CIA
but I do want to see
like
how
Batman
far can you go using all open source Raspberry Pis and get the extra mile there. And I think that today it's a lot easier to do that stuff than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And I love using Pis for it because they only use 2 or 3 watts at idle, maybe 4 or 5 watts if you do an image recognition. But
single board computers, man, they're very, very powerful little things these days, especially. Speaking of that, we've been working in the background on some pretty cool little. We're calling it a thin client, and it really is, right?
Well, it doesn't have a name yet.
Yeah, like the internal name, I guess we've been saying, but really that's kind of what it's going to be—a very single board computer, but it's going to be powerful. It's going to be able to do some really cool stuff. So we're excited about that one.
We're excited about that, and we're going to build it in such a way that there's options of the board you put in. The first kick we're going to do this is with
x86.
Yeah, like 64-bit. But we want to get deeper into ARM in 2 ways. Like it's low power, we can do some really cool stuff where it's really cool in the home, but I also just want to see what you can do with clustering a bunch of them together and
for sure.
And really merging that enterprise type storage in with low power stuff. There's plenty of companies that have done that, and that's where we're going next with the home lab. It's a thin client. We will be putting that out before Christmas.
Ooh,
and
nice timeline.
Yeah,
we've got a tight timeline, and it's made to complement the Home Lab 15 big time, right? It's made to be with that. It's like a perfect complement for it, whether you're using it as a media server or a backup, whatever it is.
And that's the whole point with the Home Lab. We kind of want to give you building blocks and options, and enable the dreamers to do crazy stuff with it, come back on the forum and go, look what I did. Look what I built. And we're like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So
inspire each other.
Yeah. So
that forum's been, I think of all the things I've seen with the 45 Home Lab stuff, I love seeing the forum and the community guys are building up, because there's a few places it's kind of fragmented, the whole Home Lab community. And with Reddit and Twitter/X having all of its weird issues, like it seems like that it could be a nice place, even if you're not using a 45Drives product.
Absolutely.
It's a cool place, a resource for learning about how to host, why you would use certain things, different hardware. And, it's cool because it's one of many places I check now. There's, Serve the Home and Level 1 text forums and all these other places. But the 45 Home Lab forum is one of those resources I look to now.
Awesome. Yeah,
good to hear, because
really cool.
we do want that thing to grow, to have a life on its own. And
well, people to help you build a community that really kind of
it's back to
keeps
what
up.
You were saying about Drupal earlier. Like, that is the real heart of open source. It's the sharing of ideas and knowledge and working with the community.
For sure. So, with that being said, there's do you want to do our war story segment maybe next?
Yeah.
We gotta get some.
We don't have a sound effect yet, so I'm trialing different stuff. We got something. Chris just pressed a button.
Yeah, you just like find something.
But no, the only real recurring segment we have on our What's Spinning podcast so far is we talk about war stories, things that you've seen in the field, for better, big wins, big losses, everything in between. Just interesting stuff that you would have never seen. Back to our talk about experience that you would never have learned in school.
Exactly.
Here's how you should have done something. Here's how it's done. The answer's gonna be right somewhere in the middle. And you always hear good stuff on there. So what we wanted to ask you, Jeff, is in your long history here so far, you got any good war stories you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean that storage thing was one of the things that like it kind of caught us off guard because I didn't mention the part that was like the emergency mode. Uh-oh, it's 3 a.m. and they decided to pull the switch at that point. When we were not quite ready. But when that happened, we had some monitoring is very important in IT, and we knew that there was going to be some issues. So we set up monitoring dashboards for like everything, for page requests and database. For storage, access speeds, and all that, and just when they'd cut over, what happened, and we realized quickly that we needed to basically unplug the money spigot and pour money into AWS. It was when that morning they also decided, hey, we have this new thing. Let's launch a new product that's going to get hundreds of thousands of people on the site in the course of 10 minutes. So they did that, which was. Nah, it's like the worst nightmare for a launch, but we found out because all the numbers just went to 0. But on the back end we were testing things and we're like, this is all fine. Everything was because at that time, at least, I think they changed this partly as a result of our launch. At that time, if you went over your bandwidth allocation for how much, like it was a terabyte or 2 terabytes or something per day or whatever the metric was. Then they would just throttle you to like 10 kilobits per second for storage bandwidth.
Yeah.
And that's not much.
No,
especially when this company is uploading like 2 megabyte image files and there's like 12 of them for a page load and all that. So we had to figure that out quickly. We got that was one of the only times I spoke directly with one of the AWS technicians who worked on the stuff and could hit buttons and change things. And we got that changed pretty quick. Pretty quick being hours, which was not good for my reputation for that month. But it was tough because it's like, why didn't you know this? And it's like, well, we've never launched this big of a project on this newer storage platform, and AWS still had trouble figuring out exactly what was going on for a couple hours because like the guy who knew about that particular feature was not there. So
of course,
but I've had a few things like that in the past, and it's usually launch day. I don't know why it is. There's always one thing. It's the unknown unknown, as one of my former colleagues would put it. It's always those unknown unknowns that get you in the end. And you can plan as much as you can, and you're always going to have one.
For sure.
It's really tough when the one unknown caused the entire thing to go flat, and not just like one image not to load.
Yeah, those unknown unknowns will get you. You just learn to embrace them.
Yep. Do you know if they ever decided to go back on prem or if they continued on with cloud?
They kept it in the cloud. Yeah. We helped them to reduce some of that bandwidth use. Nice. We optimized some things for them and got it. And I mean, for their operation, I think that it was kind of a broader like this is how it's going to happen for everybody. So they didn't really have the option to go back, but it worked out. And to this day, a lot of that system is still structurally the same there. So it worked, and it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. So that's a very long time in web software world.
Yeah, it's interesting they use SMB for web page requests. I figured S3 would be just as, or if not, more performant.
The tough thing is a lot of these CMSs do a lot of dynamic access on the file system, which is really tough with S3.
Yeah, exactly.
We prototyped it with S3FS, which is a way to put a file system on S3, but it's so bad. It's terrible if you're doing anything more than
just
whatever. And we couldn't cache everything. That's the hard thing. If you can cache, there's so many things you can do.
Yeah, there
was no caching for this.
There's a cool file system layer that our clone does with Windows. It's like with Windows File System Proxy, and that's kind of what they'll do is they'll build like a little RAM cache layer so you can put the file into that, use it as a file system, so you can do like range byte locking and things like that, like you wouldn't expect with a normal file system, and then flush it back to the S3 layer. But don't know how that would work on a massive website scale where this is just kind of like local file system stuff. So for sure, interesting. I didn't consider that.
Yeah, the whole S3 versus file system will always be an interesting one.
Yep.
Because humans love the file systems.
Yeah, but it's just like, you can't do random I/O on an object.
Yeah. You mean I just get or I put? Sounds great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
We got a question in the chat here. Any benefits for Ceph in a home lab? So I'm just going to blanket.
Are you learning?
What? Well, yeah, my blanket statement is yes.
Yeah.
Like, what a better place to learn and hack around with Ceph. You don't have to have a big 3-node cluster or more. You can just use a single node cluster.
Yeah.
The home lab is a perfect place to try anything new.
Now, it's like, do you want to put stable storage in your home lab where it's like, this is home lab, but it's also data I don't want to lose? Well, then maybe you want to be a little more deliberate in how you build your home lab Ceph cluster. But if you're just looking to learn and really get in there, you need one machine, and it doesn't even have to be that very performant either. And especially with Ceph ADM these days, you just containerize. You can spin up a Ceph cluster in about 3 commands.
and
be off to the races.
Most people are wanting to. Not everyone wants to play with storage stuff just to store stuff, I think.
Yeah.
So they want it because they want to build something out of it.
Yep.
And another great point of Ceph is you get file, block, and S3 for free.
Exactly.
So, like, I don't know, maybe you're a developer and you need one of the 3, or you want to, or they're doing what we just talked about here. Can I do it with S3? Can I do file system?
Yeah,
it's
you want to test different applications, right?
Yeah, I think in general, most people probably don't need Ceph. It's really like you said, if you're doing something with it, that's when it's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a developer and you target Ceph in production somewhere that you work, it's huge to play around with it in the home lab. I mean, that's, for a lot of us, the home lab is where you take the things in work that you want to learn more about, or that you want to do better than you could at work sometimes, or with cheaper things than at work, and learn some things.
Exactly.
So I think from that perspective, it's great. I think for most people, the storage component is you need a NAS type system, a single thing, and have a backup. Like that's going to be adequate. But once you start building an application or running a bunch of things and you need network storage, Ceph is like so much better than anything else. I used to use Gluster at the house, and it was not fun.
No.
And I mean, to be fair, back when I was using Gluster 4 or 5 years ago, Ceph was not as good as it is today. In the past 3 or so years, Ceph went from like hard and sometimes insane to like pretty easy and not usually surprising, which is, for storage, that's incredible.
Yeah, you nailed it. And GlusterFS is incredibly easy to use. And you can go from, I know how to put a file system onto a drive, to I can build a cluster like that. But where Gluster came into the issues is when things broke.
And breaking.
And scale.
If something breaks, you lose your data.
Yeah.
we lost a lot of data that way. So we always had to have all the backups of Gluster running in Ceph. I mean, you still need a backup, but it's not the same. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, we've pulled some data back from the brink on Ceph clusters. It's pretty resilient on what it can save.
Yep. A lot of people say, they've never seen Ceph actually lose data. It's always something that someone did deliberately or in some way. But Ceph itself just doesn't lose data. It's so resilient. But to your point on like the solution when you're moving out of the home lab, we have this concept that we use called clustering for everyone. And traditionally, right, when people think of Ceph clustering, they think of these massive scaled out solutions that are for, the enterprise and all this stuff. But something that we've been doing a really good job in, and we want to push it out even further, is for these small and medium businesses that normally would just draw up a single server NAS in their office and run it, right? Where it's great, it works, it's resilient, but it's not highly available, right? If the server goes down, they're essentially at the mercy of getting that thing back up. Where we build these very small scaled Ceph clusters in comparison, where it's around this exact same price of what that single server is, but now you've got the ability to have a full server go down and still have access to your data. People don't realize how powerful that is, and the fact is, for a lot of these business file servers, the performance needs are just so low, so you don't need anything crazy beefy, and you get that great high availability. So it's something we love to do.
You're not needing like 100 gigabits.
Yeah, exactly, right? So like we run our Ceph cluster that serves both companies, Protocase and 45Drives, on a 1 gigabit connection, and not one person in this entire building will complain, because it's just general file server, right? It's documents, it's images, it's, stuff like that to do your job. We're not doing massive workloads on it, and there's hundreds, 600 connections, something like that.
And they've reduced it now, but like you said, the documentation 5-6 years ago was when we built that thing, was like, don't do anything less than 10 gig, and you better have segregated networks, and everything better be perfect.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just like,
I still get that too.
Yeah.
Anytime I talk about my little ARM Ceph clusters, it's like, you can't do that. It's like, well, I
Prove
did
it.
do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's really stable. It's just not super fast, but
It
But
like
works.
even
It's stable.
the little ARM cluster board can do a Ceph cluster and get 60 to 70 megabytes per second, which is adequate for a lot of IT needs.
Very
So
adequate.
I wouldn't recommend taking one of those little consumer cluster boards and throwing it into production
Sure.
for Fortune 500. That's insane.
Of course.
But it's not like it's bad, and I wouldn't feel uncomfortable having my storage on it. It's just I need the 10 gigabits because I do video. That's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
different need than most IT.
Yeah, and people's needs sometimes just funnel down to how fast does it go.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it goes fast enough. What else do you need out of it? Like in our case, I want to be able to have the business operate if the server goes down. Oh, like we got to cut power in building 2 because we need to do this. All right, it's fine. We don't have to move the server into the other building.
Exactly.
It's fine.
Yep. No, it's
Yeah.
so true. We got some more
And
questions.
over in the comments, I see questions also about the HL15 and getting started and things. It would be cool. I know I saw Network Chuck has a series talking about his new things, and I'm hoping that you guys are he's gonna set up a Ceph cluster. It'd be cool to see his take on it, especially he went like to the nines with that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he did.
We give him a Ceph and Proxmox cluster, so
That's
yeah,
like
we got big
everything.
plans.
So I think it'd be cool to see that approach, but also to see. I'm excited to see on the forum, different people sharing their experiences, because I've seen a few people already posting like Unraid and things like that. But seeing somebody build a Ceph cluster with, I think somebody, it might be LavaVex. I don't know if it was him in the comments, but somebody somewhere was going to buy 3 HL15s and build their own Ceph cluster.
Oh, that,
So
Yeah, I
whoever
saw-
that is, I'm following that very closely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There was another one I saw on there before we launched, and they were like, I want to build a compute cluster because my wife does like genomics research, or I forget what
Okay.
the research was, but it was like their university lab was oversaturated.
okay.
And something like that. And they're like, we did the math. It's cheaper if her and a couple of her colleagues all get one of these, and then we build a cluster. And can everyone help me size electronics for like doing this compute thing? And
That's
I was
cool.
just like, yeah, this is what this is for.
That's cool. Hopefully they pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Love to hear more.
Yeah.
Good. So I'd love to see some ZFS replication stuff. I currently have my offsite as external HDD. I rsync to every night and put in my safe deposit box every 3 months. So you mean you want to see some ZFS replication stuff on our YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We could definitely make that happen for you. We have that built into Houston, so we can show you how you could achieve a ZFS send receive schedule, and we could do all that through Houston. So we can put a video together.
But it'd be really cool, I think, for you guys to do a first party, like, from day one. You get the box, you pull it out, and you had a good example of like the speed and all that. Doug was on that video.
Yeah.
But having some maybe 3 to 5 minute videos of like unboxing and plugging it in, getting it turned on, making sure you can see it, and then getting, if let's say you have your own hardware, like how do you install Houston? How do you get that set up?
Great point.
Something like that, and then how do you set up a storage array, and then how do you set up different advanced topics? And ZFS replication is something that's like a killer feature for it.
Absolutely.
That can make it better than rsync, because most of us, I still use rsync. I use rclone now, but it's basically
same
rsync.
thing.
Like
Yep.
ZFS replication is better than that. I'm too lazy to set it up.
It's like, you're
But,
going
but
and
I
crawling a
want
file
to.
system versus you're looking at the block level. I mean,
Yes.
the efficiency is there for sure. So you don't make use of any ZFS send receive. You just go, I guess, because you're replicating
Not
to the
right
cloud
now.
anyway. You can't really.
Yeah, I'm doing it to Glacier. So Glacier
Right, so
does not.
that's- yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
right,
have
it's
that
not ZFS.
capability.
Yep.
But I use rclone, and rclone is awesome.
Yeah, we
It's
love
like
rclone.
It's like the Swiss Army knife for copying data to
For
anything
sure.
from anything.
Yep.
So,
Awesome.
but once I talk to the Wendell Cloud, I want to get ZFS
Then we can go
replication
with
going.
it,
I
yeah.
also have an idea for that video that I think will be pretty fun. That will use some of ZFS capabilities.
I can't wait to see it. Speaking of the Network Chuck stuff too, we definitely have some stuff planned with them. We're working out logistics with those guys right now, but I've been so excited to get those videos off the ground. They've got it all racked. I don't know if you saw that video. Everything's all racked
Yes.
and ready to go.
Yep.
I think he even built some of the network out. So I can't
Yeah.
say much
That
more
was
about what
quite
we're
the
planning
network
right
he
now.
planned
But
out.
yeah, we got some revisions that we're gonna make. But he's definitely got lots. I mean, they're not hurting for switching hardware. I think that's for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we're zeroing in on an hour here. What do you think? Anything else we didn't touch on?
I think we hit most of our points here.
Well, it's been awesome chatting with you for the last hour, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming on. It's cool to hear about kind of some of your origin story, especially the radio stuff. You know, actually, before we wrap up, too, I was down the CDC recently delivering some training, and I met a guy down there, and he was such an interesting guy, and it'd be cool if he was watching. But he is a massive ham radio enthusiast. So when I was teaching Linux training, and he was so stoked because like he's been playing with Raspberry Pis a lot because he does a lot of ham radio stuff, and like every day he was just showing me some of the cool projects he was doing with that stuff. It just opened my mind to a whole world that I didn't even really know existing. Like those guys are hardcore, and it's all about like if the grid goes down, all this hardware that they have and these clubs that they have to send out the message. Like it was so cool.
Ham radio is. I just got my license this year, so my dad and I will be doing some fun stuff with it. I have a bunch of SDR stuff that I want to test. I have a Caribou Light for the Raspberry Pi and some other things. I also, so just a couple weeks ago, my dad and I went to KMOX AM tower site in St. Louis, and it's a 50 kilowatt AM station. So this tower's pumping out 50,000 watts of RF.
That's wild.
It literally is buzzing, and you can hear the sound of the voice through the coils that tune the tower.
Oh, that's cool. I've seen a video of that before where you can hear them through the. That's awesome.
So that'll be coming out tomorrow, actually. So anybody watching this, if you hop over to the Geerling Engineering channel and subscribe to that.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. This has been great. I can't wait to see you next year for the Creator Summit. Hopefully you'll be able to make it. Yeah. We'll go bigger than last year, bigger and better.
Someone on my Discord mentioned that we should have like a 45Drives America meetup sometime, and I don't know what we would do. But
where should we go?
That could be fun.
Sold on that. I don't know. Where should we go?
Somewhere. I mean, St. Louis is pretty central. I'm just saying.
Never been.
St. Louis Blues. Let's
stay on the East Coast.
Yep. That would be really cool. No, we.
All right. Well, that sounds good.
Let's plan it.
Somewhere Doug can sail us down.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be a long journey.
It's a long journey. Yeah,
we'll fly home.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Cheers.